This podcast is brought to you by Spirits and Distilling for those who make and drink great spirits. Join our free email newsletter for technical and creative distilling stories in your inbox every week. Learn more at spiritsanddistilling.com.
Hello and welcome to the Craft Spirits and Distillers podcast, episode 29. I'm your host, Molly Tripp, and today with me is Devon Trevathan, the co-founder of Liba Spirits and Trovador Rum. Her distilleries are considered nomadic, and today we're going to talk about what that means, some of their products, and their inspiration. Before we dive in, G&D Chillers understands that each distillery's chilling requirements are unique. On every distillery project, G&D offers the front-end design and engineering for your team at no cost to you. Sid Delaray from Filibuster Distillery says, "From the design and engineering to installation and startup, G&D was easy to work with. We've had great customer service since commissioning our chiller, and I'd highly recommend them for any distillery system. Reach out for a quote today at gdchillers.com. Devon, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
Well, I just want to get right into it and have you tell me how you got started in the spirits industry.
Yeah. I'm not somebody who came from a background, particularly, like my education was not with this career in mind. I went to school for psychology and criminology, though I do think that some of those skills come into play in this business. But I graduated college, actually moved to Taiwan for a year right after, and then I came back to the United States, and I kind of through the hospitality grapevine, because I was working at a restaurant in Nashville, Tennessee, got this job at Corsair Distillery, working in their front of house. And, at that point, I had almost no experience with spirits. My parents didn't even really drink spirits, so it wasn't even, I didn't even have a bottle or a type that I could think of that was specifically nostalgic for me. But I did work at a Mellow Mushroom in in college. And they had this really extensive craft beer selection. And it was kind of at that time, the height of the whole craft beer thing. And I thought I was going to start working in this distillery, funny enough, to learn more about the brewing process. And I fell in love with the distilling process in the industry and how it brings together like artistry and history and science. And then I just kept going from there.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit more. What was like that moment, that aha moment that just made you realize that you were falling in love?
What was that like aha moment? Actually, part of it was when I started working, I think I was 21 when I started working at Corsair. So very young, very new to whiskey. And initially I was doing all these tastings and walking people through it and doing tours and stuff. And initially it didn't even really work for me, that profile. Was not appreciating it, that's for sure. And I just committed to pushing through that. And to continue to sip it and taste it until there was something else coming out of it than just what I would, the initial reaction to alcohol and the heat of it and everything. So I think one of the big aha moments for me was that moment where I truly had pushed through, and I had a sip of our Corsair's triple smoke whiskey. And it was like, it had all this crazy flavor, and I was picking up all this nuance, and I liked that. I liked that flavor. And I was like, oh, wow, I now want to drink this. I don't have to drink anymore, but now I still have to, but now I'm like, I want to drink this. I'm getting all of this complexity. I'm noting the smokes and the way that the barley smoked in cherry wood is different than the barley smoked in peat, and how they are like merging together and creating something really amazing and flavorful. And that was such a big moment for me, because when I first started, I thought there's no way I'm ever going to be a person who drinks whiskey, like that feels very far away from me. And it really was just a matter of kind of training my palate to get there.
You find it so interesting that was like your aha moment. As there was whiskeys I loved before that, but the whiskey that was hardest for me to get on board was peated whiskey. When I was in Scotland, I still was not on board. I could not get over the fact that it smelled to me like a biology lab I did in high school with field pigs.
Yes.
And
that's an unfortunately specific association.
It's a very strong association in my head for a long time. And it wasn't until I got to go to Isla and experience it there and was immersed in it that I actually appreciated it. So for you to say that was just your aha, that's so cool.
That was my aha. And then, even though I would say triple smoke is light on peat for the peated whiskey world, that became the first type of whiskey that I really loved. Before bourbon, before rye, before anything else, I really loved Scotch whiskey, and particularly peated Scotch whiskeys, which is it is a little bit crazy because it is a very challenging flavor profile. I mean, it
is,
even without that specific association to a pig lab. What was it?
Section.
Okay. Even without that, it does smell at times like Band-Aids and an old shoe and burnt pencil eraser and all of these things and burnt hair. I think at some point is a tasting note. All these things that do not sound at all appealing to any normal person, I guess. But once you start to get into it, there's something really rich and unique about it, and it does. And then, trying to learn what peat is really crazy, and it is organic matter that has been compounded by time and space and water, and it turns into something just completely unique. And it's crazy that it's also just very cool historically that started to be used to basically dry grain or as fuel for fires for kilning or drying grain or smoking grain. And that's how we get this unique flavor that has become something that people appreciate so much that it has its own style and its own legions of fans the world over. That is so cool and so historically tied in that I think that's poetry. It's so amazing. But yeah, if you just go into a pour of peated Scotch, it can be
choice.
Yes, I did learn quickly also that you have to kind of end the night with your peated Scotch. It's hard to start with it because you're never going to get that flavor out of your mouth for the rest of the night.
No, it is definitely, if that's where you're starting, that's where you're going to continue with.
Yeah,
and
that's where you stayed.
That's where you
Yeah, it's specific. Have you ever thought about doing that for a perfume? Just the most repellent perfume possible.
I love that there's some perfumers out there who kind of lean into that. There's a really pretty famous one, Imaginary Authors in Portland, who I don't think they have anything peaty, but they have something that's like ox blood. And so it's really animalistic, really bloody. And it's it doesn't sound great, but there are huge fans of it.
Yeah.
And I assume that means some people out there were wearing it. They're not just buying it for shine.
Just for the look. Yeah, I think so. I imagine so. I actually do think that there's a philosophy that I think is most attributed to perfume that I also believe applies to spirits and distillation, which is that a lot of perfume makers sometimes include something a little bit off into the blend because it does it brings you back, and it adds more complexity that draws you in. And exactly. I think that's so true. Having that one or a couple of notes that are a little bit, weird or off or not what you would naturally think is something that you want to either smell or consume does it keeps drawing you back in, and you keep going back in for more tastes or sniffs or whatever.
Definitely, I have heard that applied more for perfume. Have you applied that with spirits you've made before?
Yeah,
It's a difficult question because you don't want to be like, I like to repel people with mixed spirits.
Yeah, I'm just dabbling with, poisonous things in my, no, I do not put anything poisonous in my spirits. Okay. No,
just something that
most definitely not.
Could be. The poison for couscous.
I think I definitely do bring in, I'm not afraid to incorporate something that's kind of like against the type or against the norm for certain types of spirits. I think of the spirits that I've been really responsible for, probably the most emblematic of that is when we made this rum in New Orleans called Lafcadio. That is a rum we distilled from molasses in New Orleans, and then we also infused it during the process with some botanicals, but we included bay leaf and peppercorn because that's found in, it's used in like a lot of classic New Orleans cooking. It's really seminal flavors to cuisine, but not a lot of people thought of that as a normal inclusion for rum. Like if you think about rum and then you think about rum with flavor, you're probably thinking coconut or lime. Yeah. Something like classical, fruity or easy. Yeah. No, we went savory. And I love it, but a ton of people hate it. And they tell it to me, like they tell it to my face straight up. And I can't. It's nice. It really is nice. It's like showing a person your baby and them just being like, that baby's ugly.
We're not saying. No.
Thank you so much. Yeah. That that baby's not for you, and that's okay. It is super duper. It's a super polarizing spirit. But that is part of what I love about it. It still is to this day, like the nose, the aroma, one of the ones I love kind of coming back to. I can smell it right away, like from across the room when we open a bottle. And I just always find it kind of interesting to nose, no matter, like I've smelled it so many times at this point, and it just keeps on inviting me back. I don't know.
I really think we skipped an important piece of the story, which is, and we'll definitely get back to the flavor, but I want to make sure we kind of cover some groundwork first. But let's talk about your current company, Liba, but maybe your journey to starting Liba Spirits. Yes.
So I can kind of pick that back up where I left my entrance into the industry. So short-ish kind of connective tissue. Working at Corsair was amazing and eye-opening. I loved that experience. And from that, I got involved in the American Craft Spirits Association, where I met a number of exceptional individuals throughout this industry, yourself included, and so many others. And that was just such a defining kind of experience for me. And then from that, I started writing for the Artisan Spirit magazine, which is just also a great community, and I love them so much. And doing that for a couple of years. And then I also became a brand ambassador for Maggie's Farm Rum, but here in Nashville, Tennessee, which was a great experience as well. And again, another team of people that I just love and adore. That is kind of a theme working in this industry. And then I did a couple other jobs, all of these jobs were great, but they were not necessarily the most high paying individually, but I knew that I had to kind of get a sense of which direction in the industry I wanted to go. And the whole time I really thought I was going to focus on writing more. But freelance is just it's a tough gig. I'm not afraid to say that. I don't know that I was cut out for or ready to just commit myself 100% of the time to freelance, because it's a lot of just tough work, unpaid labor, constantly, hunting down stories and writing stuff that maybe you're not even that excited about, but just to get the momentum and get the relationships going. So I instead, was looking at what else could really work. And then at that same time, I'd known my business partner, Colton Weinstein, for a very long time. At that time, we were dating. We're not in a relationship like that anymore, but we're totally cool and just committed business partners. And we decided to do something. I could feel he was in the same position as with his, job working at Corsair as their like longtime head distiller. He was feeling like he wanted to do something, but he wasn't really interested in going to like the macro route. So we both thought, let's just do something on our own. And then we started looking at what it would cost to get like a proper distillery, even of a modest size, go in. And it's a very capital intensive position, not something we had at that moment, not even something we have now. But we both kind of independently thought about this idea of like itinerant nomadic gypsy distilling. We call it nomadic. A lot of people call it something else. But this concept that we don't need to build out our own distillery. At this point, there are enough distilleries around the world that we can use if people will let us. And it also completely like just blows wide open the amount of options that we have and the styles of spirit that we can make. And that was so cool and so appealing. And, I had just lived abroad for a year right before I started working in this industry. I've always really loved travel. I'm definitely a person who wants to live in a lot of different places and has had the opportunity to, which is great. And I'm very thankful for. And so the whole, like the notion, which is a very common one in this industry of settling down and getting started. I know you know this, getting started with one place and just being like, okay, well, we're going to start distilling this thing that we really want to distill. And it's not going to be even, the first barrels are not even going to be ready for 5 years at least. So we're here for the long haul. That's just so typical of this industry for good reason. And, it creates great results, but it didn't feel like the right thing for us at that time. We just didn't really want to commit to that. So we thought, let's do this nomadic distilling adventure. And that's how we came up with Liba Spirits. And we got everything done. And we were kind of influenced by a couple trips that we took. One, namely to Australia in late 2018. Again, through the ACSA at their convention, we'd met this kind of small army of Australian distillers who came. And were you there? Did you meet them? I think it was in Portland.
Was it ADI or was it?
Maybe it was ADI.
I remember meeting a bunch of Australian distillers.
I think it must have been
in Portland.
Yeah. Sorry, everybody.
I had no idea. I was like, why are you all here? But it was great. It was so fun.
Out of nowhere, I was like, why are there like 17 of you here this year?
Long ways to go.
Yeah, exactly. But they were so interesting. They were so fun. We really loved them. We got along with them really well. And they were telling us about where they were at with their kind of craft. And I'm kind of putting that in hand quotes, but like their craft distilling industry. They had independent distilleries starting out there, but it was a really, really not like novice kind of, they were at their infancy of that part of the industry. And mostly big part of that is because it's really like taxes on distilled spirits are really, really prohibitive in Australia. But these passionate souls were doing it. And then they invited us out and we were like, oh, okay, well, why not? Like, I want to go to Australia. These people are cool. Let's check it out. And it was just such a great experience and understanding how they were, especially with things like gin and a little bit with their whiskey, really using their ingredients from their local or regional kind of environment to differentiate and create new flavors and new profiles was awesome. And we just fell in love with that. And it just really reinforced that was what we should be doing. And then we started this company that was based on travel officially in February 2020.
Oh, what great timing.
What great timing. Wasn't it meant to be? We could not have anticipated exactly what was going to happen.
No.
That was not in the business plan, that's for sure.
Like, I just spent so much time writing this business plan. Let me just completely rewrite it.
Truly, 80 pages later, that's not, no contingencies for
small feat.
that. No, and nothing about what came. But I mean, as much as that obviously foundationally affected everything about what we were doing, it did the same for pretty much everybody else that we knew. And ultimately, I was happy that we didn't, that we hadn't signed the lease on a literal physical space in February 2020, because that would have been horrific.
Oh, yeah. And there are some people who did, and they're still in business, and some people, it's like in any industry, was hit hard.
Yeah.
But I think, like, listening to your story right now, I'm getting the feeling that you're making it sound very easy and like tempting.
Yeah.
But
sorry.
And
it wasn't.
Travel the world, make spirits sounds amazing. There must be some real difficulties with this when it comes to like bringing things into the country, importation, all those details. And you guys figured out a lot of that. And it's not necessarily something you guys worked in before. Like, you have to learn so many new skills when you're starting the business, but this is daunting.
Yeah, I mean, I think I probably have to romanticize it when I talk about it for myself more than anybody else. Because if we didn't love it, and if it wasn't this like dream, hell no. I hope I can curse. Hell's not that bad though. But hell no, would I fucking, oh Jesus, I just said that. Okay, hell no, would I do that style if it was not a dream? Because yeah, absolutely, it is just riddled with complexity and all of these, ways that you were spread so thin and you were constantly reacting. And yeah, I mean, like the difficulty of it, the worst difficulty of it, I think, or the most difficult part really started for us. It's all the stuff that happens after the distillations are complete. The distillation part, we've had, thankfully, a couple of really, really positive, just, experiences that went really well. Once that's complete, though, getting spirit transported across multiple countries, figuring out how that's supposed to go, who you have to pay, what permits, what you should do, how you can do it to best avoid some kind of unforeseen European tax that comes out of nowhere. All of that stuff is really been trial and error. We don't know everything when we're doing it, but we just kind of get going, and we've used resources, companies that kind of specialize in being able to do that to just connect everything together. And some solutions have been Band-Aid solutions for sure, just temporary. And then we later on it does feel like, it feels a bit like we're never fully, like SOPs are kind of useless for us because it feels like every situation is a little bit different, and we kind of have to start from square one and use what we've done already to give us as much, of a head start as we can. But there's going to be unique complexities with every situation. And so we just have to kind of go through and finally fill out all the paperwork and make sure that we have all, everything in order. All of our stuff on our end is up to date. Everything matches, all this stuff. Do as much as we can to avoid slowing down the process. But a lot of times the process is just long. All of these individual things, when you're dealing with multiple countries, multiple governments, whatever agencies, it just takes time a lot of the time. But yeah, it's been challenging, and we're spread out literally like across different people's warehouses and distilleries. And thankfully, again, the community has been great to us, and we've worked with a lot of people that we know, and they've been kind and not, they've allowed us to probably overstay our welcome at times. But it's a pain in the ass for sure. And it only got more complex once we started doing aperitivos and liqueurs, because that is just so many steps involved in that process. And a lot of it is specific to the equipment that you're using, and that equipment kind of becomes just part of your production. So it'll be interesting when we have to go and make, or when we get to go and make a liqueur, another aperitivo, in a completely different environment, because I think that will create the opportunity for some hurdles for us to get over.
Is that something you guys are currently working on?
Yeah, big time. Our kind of our own evolution as a company. So once we started Liba Spirits, we began with a distillation in Austria, in the Austrian Alps, very southern Austria, at this farm distillery that's been in the same family for almost 400 years, or just over 400 years.
Talking about staying.
Yeah. It is exactly what you would imagine a farm distillery that's been in the same family for hundreds of years to be. It's just gorgeous, beautiful location in this valley surrounded by these 5 huge alpine mountain tops, mountain peaks, and just in an environment that has incredible agriculture and ingredients, but also is really close to northern Italy, which is basically like a completely different environment for agriculture, but right there. And so we made this gin, 1643 Alpine gin, and 1643 is the year that it came into the hands of the family. So whatever that math is, just under 400 years.
Yeah. A long time.
A long
and I'm not
time.
doing that math either.
No, 17 years under 40. Okay. But yeah, a long time. And, it was such a picturesque place. It was such a good experience. We also knew the people who owned it so well. We knew them well. So that was we needed somebody who's going to be just generous and gracious to us as much as possible as we worked out kind of how this was going to work. Hilariously, the first distillation that we did is probably going to be the quickest we ever do, because we were able to get that done in 3 weeks. And because the pandemic started and we had to rush home, I don't think anything will ever take that little time again, because that was just like so fast. So we started with this beautiful gin that we made in Austria, and then we made the botanical rum in New Orleans. And so it was kind of, one huge difficulty, obviously, with this way is that if we want to distill the base, if we want to distill the spirit, whatever we're doing ourselves, which it is something that we do and we like to do, obviously that kind of makes barrel aging a little bit. That whole consideration of maturing in oak is going to be it's just different. It's not something that like we default to necessarily, because we just wanted to like get product out there and then get things going and utilize. And so we started to really focus on what we could do for infusions. Obviously gin itself is with the way that we distilled our gin, it was just macerating, all that flavor from ingredients. And then with the rum, a lot of flavor was coming from the fermentation of the molasses and the distillation, but we macerated some additional ingredients again. So it kind of felt like everything was leading to liqueurs, or bitter liqueurs, especially where it's, the whole thing is macerating ingredients. And so kind of after we'd already had this company for a little while, we just had an idea at one point. There was, it was probably 2021-ish, 2022. And in that time, I think was when the American consumer was becoming most into bitter liqueurs, bitter red aperitivos, especially. And there was kind of this run on American distilleries having their own kind of versions of that, producing their own versions of that. And a lot of them were they were staying very true to the Italian classics. But we were like, let's switch it up. Let's do something different and take advantage of this whole, I wouldn't call what we do necessarily terroir focused, because I don't want to get on the radar of the terroir purists who would be probably shocked and scandalized to hear anything that we do be called terroir. Because it's a very specific kind of idea. It's rooted in French philosophy. It comes from France. Some people who are very specific about terroir are really precious about it. I don't even think would say that spirits can exhibit strong terroir, or they would have a problem with spirits terroir even being applied to spirits. And then for us, we kind of like to play around with convention, because I think we both realized, and when I say us, I don't know if I've said so far, but Colton Weinstein is my business partner. And we have this company together, and everything that I've done, everything that's come out of that is a very equal representation of he and I. So I share all credit, everything with him as much. So when I'm using me, I, or us, really it is like a shared mind kind of thing. And something that you get with like long-term distilling or production partners. I think you really get onto like the same page as far as your palate, and it just becomes like a really driving force, which is nice.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So we realized once we started kind of going in and using these things, that if we went to these places and just made the exact same things that everybody there is making in the exact same style, and we're just completely true to what they do, it kind of would beg the question of why would you even buy from us necessarily? I'm sure there would be differences, of course, but to us, I think the more exciting thing was like, we can go there and we can play on convention. We can use regionality and use the space and use a distillery there, but we can also bring our experience, and then we're creating something truly new. And I think it is both paying due respect to those styles, those places, those people, the ingredients, but also not just kind of ripping it off for our own gain. And that's what it just felt the most natural to us. That's how kind of we worked as producers. So we definitely didn't want to just come to Tennessee and make a classic Italian aperitivo. That also wouldn't even make sense. But we didn't want to come to Tennessee and just make bourbon or Tennessee whiskey. And we didn't want to make an aperitivo and just make another American version of a classic Italian aperitivo. What we saw was an opportunity to make kind of a truly Americanized take on what aperitivo has done so well, and that style of liqueur. And that became our first Terrativo.
How many Terrativos are there now?
There's one on the shelf, and there's one in the works.
Can you talk about the one in the works yet?
Of course. Yes, of course. The only person who can kind of tell me whether or not I'm revealing too much is me. So I'm going to go for it. Yeah, so we'd always intended to have Terrativo be kind of like a family of spirits, of aperitifs, starting with this one that we made in Tennessee, and then branching forward. And for every single one, we would replicate the same kind of production process, where we would have a base finished spirit that was like recognizable and completely drinkable on its own, that we had distilled ourselves. And then we would infuse into that based on flavor, incorporating flavors and ingredients that came from that place where that iconic spirit is known or associated. And also you went with the first one, we also were really trying to go for a classic style of aperitif or aperitivo, which is like the bitter red. We distilled the first aperitivo in Tennessee. We made a bourbon, a high rye bourbon, and we, infused into that and made a bitter red that is definitely different than Campari. It's not as much like you think of European aperitivo, and it's kind of it's like medicinal bitter almost. They have a really interesting combination of bitterings that gives it this kind of medicinal bite. And ours is a little bit more like culinary bitter. And then we were going to trying really hard to go to Mexico and distill something with agave and infuse into that. But Mexico's got enough dealing that they've got to deal with. It has been for years, just a really, really busy distilling and production place. Distilleries there they're producing pretty routinely. And so we were already, we had a lot of like irons in the fire, and we were checking in with people, and things were kind of getting to a place where we were potentially going to be able to do it. And then the potential tariffs were announced, and I was like, I don't know if right now is the exact time to try to go down there. I don't want to complicate anybody's life. So we kind of hung back on that, put that a little bit to the side, and we instead did a run of the Alpine gin and used that as the base and infused it with elderflower and turned it into this and citrus as well, and turned into this like lemon elderflower aperitif that is just lovely. So that's getting finalized, and we're going to release that in a couple of weeks.
That's exciting. Congratulations.
Thank you. I'm very excited. It's delicious. I don't know if it's going to end up officially being called this, but we are just internally calling it nectar, but it's just like really good. It's really good. It just tastes delicious. And it's nice because
night and day ingredient wise.
Exactly. It is like, and that was a big part of what we wanted to do, was completely differentiate with the ingredients. Like I didn't want to just come out with another bitter, because that we really did that on the first one. That's also a really complex and difficult process, and it's crazy making in its own way, because balancing the bitter with everything else, you can make endless samples. You make 1 million samples and it's still not going to feel exactly right, but you're pretty much there. It's its own crazy experience. But this just came together so naturally, and it really showcases the character of the gin base beautifully, since gin is a little bit more of like a delicate flavor profile at times. It didn't need too much on top. It just needed this little extra bit. And as it dilutes, if you're drinking it like, my favorite way to drink it is just with mineral water or soda water over ice, and it just becomes so like just gorgeous. Really lovely.
And just from like my own knowledge, so flavored gin to aperitif, basically it's sugar content.
Yeah.
Correct?
Yeah.
That's a big difference.
Well, we infused, so the gin didn't have elderflower in it. So we did this kind of intense infusion of elderflower, and then also a little bit of lemon, a little extra lemon, and then sweetened it. Yep.
Gotcha. Okay. You guys both have probably in your careers worked with sugar a little bit, but that's, I've worked primarily in clear spirits, not adding sugar. It creates its own complications.
Absolutely. You are wise to not work with it.
You worked with it. I have never had my most favorite experience with it. I'll just put it that way.
Yeah.
Let's talk about how complicated that can be.
It is a super complicated. First off, everybody's impression of what, or their preference for what the right amount of sugar is. There's never been anything more disparate for me than getting people's reaction to the sugar content or sweetness, like perceptible sweetness of a product. It is all over the map. Some people really, they love a lot of sugar and they don't even know it.
Oh, yeah.
They don't even realize it. I actually remember, speaking of Maggie's farm, the good people there, Will specifically, their director of marketing, maybe he's got a different title now, Will Groves. I was with him at some kind of consumer facing event, and somebody was asking him a question about their very popular liqueur, the falernum that they make from their rum. And somebody asked him about something about it, why it was so popular, or what the special ingredient was. And he was like, it's sugar. It's way sweeter than you think. It is like, it's super sweet, and everybody's afraid to admit to that. And producers are afraid to go there, but that's what people love. They love it sweet. It is balanced in that, it's balanced in that spirit, especially because they use all this fresh lime zest. And so it's very sharp and bright. And that's what sugar ends up being in these types of spirits or liqueurs, is as often it is a balancing ingredient as anything else. But it is, people like it sweet. They do. That's what they think of. And so when you try to bring something to market that maybe is like a little bit less sweet, as much as you think it's like the right place or it fits for your profile, your palate, not the same for everybody else. It's really hard to please everybody. It's very hard to please everybody when you make spirits. Everybody's got an opinion, and they're not going to be afraid to tell you. But especially with liqueurs, it is really hard to balance that whole. You kind of have to just follow your intuition, your gut, and what you think is the right thing to do.
What did your gut tell you with this? Did you end up going like on the super sweet side? Did you go in the middle?
Well, with the elderflower, we went a little bit more the middle. I don't think that we'll ever go. It is really bright. It has a lot of like lemony, kind of brighter, more almost like a sharp lemon note, but it's not overpowering anything. But I think that balances the sweetness. I think we ended up going with the middle. We did like 6 different samples, mostly at varying levels of sugar. And I think we ended up at somewhere like right over the middle, basically. So kind of, they were all really good. And it's another thing is that your sugar is going to give you the body that liqueur is known for, and that people who drink it are expecting, and that bartenders expect to use in their cocktails. So you need it. You need to have it. You need to have it be the right mouthfeel for that. And it's just, a lot of times I think we end up kind of low for the category and kind of in the middle of where we would. I think we always end up wanting it like a little bit less, but we just turn it up a tiny bit. And it's better for that. The first Aperitivo that we did, since it's a bitter liqueur, since it's like a bitter red, that the sugar is obviously, it plays a very specific role, and it needs to be there to be able to balance out the bitter. And that's another thing, is that people's tolerance for bitter is extraordinarily all over the place. You just, everybody's got a different impression of what too bitter is.
Oh yeah. And it's funny because you're talking about like bitter too, and try doing bitter without sweetness. People are, oh yeah, no.
It's terrible. That's like Malort is basically bitter without
punishments.
Exactly. And everybody hates it. They like ironically love it, but hate it.
It's funny. Maybe Malort. I love you, Malort.
I love you, Malort. I love you. I've had you in a number of different places, and it's always fun. And I especially love to force you upon unsuspecting friends and family and watch as they drink it. It's hilarious.
It's an industry ritual, right? It's
classic. Yeah. Absolutely.
Is it our hazing, our nice version of hazing everyone?
I think it is. But it's funny that also people think like, people put Fernet kind of in that same category. And then we're over here like, what? No, Fernet is delicious. It's legitimately delicious. It's like a treat. but some people find it too. Oh, okay.
It's just not my cup of tea. It's not delicious to me.
Yes.
It's not bad either. I just don't gravitate towards it.
I definitely had a period of time where I was drinking like a High Life with a shot of Malort, and that was kind of my go-to. So I really have grown to have like an appreciation for it. I don't think I would like, actually I haven't had it in so long. I don't think I would love the profile of Jaeger now.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
It's been so long since I've revisited it, but I have a feeling I would not either.
I don't know where the sugar content is on something like that, which is an interesting consideration because it's not. Is Jaeger liqueur?
I imagine. I don't know
sure.
for sure, but I imagine. Right?
But it's also
where is it on that shelf? I feel like it's with the rest. Yeah.
Is it with liqueurs? But when bartenders use it, do they kind of use it like a base spirit?
God, have I ever seen it used in anything but a shot?
Yes. I mean, you have, because sometimes, okay, yes, it's a liqueur made with a blend of 56 botanicals and then added sugar. But I don't think that its sugar content is very high, because when I see it sometimes used for like their sponsored events, I feel like it's used as kind of a base. It is 35%, so it's higher than aperitivos. And that was another thing, balancing okay, this is not important. Anyways, sugar. So everybody, that is a part of it. Everybody's impression of sugar is all over the place. Everybody's tolerance for bitter is all over the place. You need to use sugar to balance your bitter flavors in aperitivos. That's just part of it. And also, if you're, following the general convention of what aperitivo is, it is, it's a liqueur that is, you can use it to make a cocktail very simply that can be enjoyed during the afternoon or during lunch, depending on who you ask. And you can, it's packed full of these flavors because you're supposed to have it with a bunch of ice and soda water and sparkling wine or something, and it opens up and it's complex on its own. So the sugar is just an essential part of that, because all great cocktails for the most part have sugar as some part of it. It's an essential building block of the cocktail itself. So it needs to be there. It's a hard one to it's hard to make the exact decision. It's one of those things where it's just balancing all of these different things becomes a very complex process, and inevitably it just happens. You have to just be really committed to like tasting and retasting and tasting and retasting these products so that you become really intimately familiar with what this profile is, and you can recreate it and continue and create consistency. Because otherwise, you can track obviously the level of your spirit, the strength of the spirit, the sugar content, the exact weight of all of the ingredients that you're using to infuse, to macerate. But it's crazy how just little things can affect the character, the way that everything is perceived. You can do the exact same process, production, of a liqueur, of an aperitivo, and it can kind of come out tasting a little bit different depending on environmental factors and all sorts of stuff. So sugar it helps create some of that consistency, but it's a pain in the ass to work with. It's a pain for filtering. Filtering just sucks with sugar.
I think of usually when you work in a distillery, you kind of go home at the end of the day and you probably are sore from working. You probably kind of smell like mash or something, or spirits or whatever. And like you kind of come to terms with that. But when you start working with sugar, you also go home sticky. Like no matter what.
Everything's sticky. Yeah.
Everything's sticky.
The floor is sticky. All of your equipment, your tubes,
filtration
sticky.
Equipment.
Filtration equipment is sticky. Yeah. The bottles are all sticky, you know.
It just like kind of drives you crazy.
It absolutely drives you crazy. Tactily, it's crazy. The mouth of your bottle. I mean, I think actually this is a really interesting. I don't think that any of our bottles have ever had the kind of residual liqueur that's on the top or kind of the mouth of the bottle crystallize, whereas that's happened with like every single bottle of Campari I've ever owned. And I think it's because they do have like a pretty high sugar content. I don't remember what it is exactly, but it's because the base is really freaking bitter. And if it didn't have that sugar, you'd be like, it would be, massive ick. This is undrinkable, basically.
You'd be adding your own sugar to it.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And nobody wants to do that. Nobody wants to make simple syrup. So it is, the filtering process is really a challenge.
Let's talk a little bit about what is challenging with filtering sugar.
Yeah. So with our liqueurs, the aperitivo line, we filter through a plate and frame with 3 micron filters. And we did a lot of trial and error and found that micron was, the right one for filtering out enough. So the way that we do it when we're doing the production, we have our base bourbon that we've distilled. Once that's ready, because we age it for a little bit, it's only like about a year on average because we found too much barrel character was too much for that exact product because there was a lot of other profile or a lot of other character coming into it. But once we pull that spirit out of the barrel, we use that as the base. We infuse into it all the bittering, the spices, and a little bit of the orange peel, this dried orange peel. And then separately, we do like an infusion, a steeping of hibiscus into water. And we combine that with cherry, this like broken down cherry concentrate. And we have those 2 mixtures separate. And we run both of those through filters. We filter both of those separately. And then we combine and add the sugar. Because we found that the sugar is just a pain and it's really hard to filter it effectively in a way that doesn't create a problem for the final body and care, like especially the mouthfeel of the final product. What's tricky about all of this is that, the standard of what we consider for classic aperitivo, like Campari and Aperol, they're sitting on the shelf. They are crystal clear and it is bright red. It is like an unnatural shade of red and super crystal clear. If you are working with natural ingredients only, whole ingredients, that's really hard to do. It's really hard to get the intensity of the hue red enough while also having it completely free of any sediment at all. And then, the logical conclusion of that train of thought is that those brands that are up on the shelf and they're perfectly crystal clear and really, really intensely red probably are not using just natural ingredients or just the ingredients as their source of color. But I don't think people are thinking like that. They're just thinking that's what that's supposed to look like. It's supposed to be pretty candy apple red. So we just had to embrace the fact that it's going to be different and it's going to look different. Our bitter red aperitivo is darker. And as much as we try to keep it free of as much sediment as possible, sometimes there's a little bit, but that's what you get when you work with real, bark, dried bark. There's a lot of sediment that can come from that. We pull out as much as possible, but we would rather the character, the mouthfeel, the body be right than have it be perfectly crystal clear. That's like our, value. That's what we value the most. But yeah, it is a pain in the butt. It's a pain.
Oh, yeah.
Have you worked with liqueurs, like infused liqueurs like that?
To a very small degree. Like a cherry blossom liqueur. And I guess not really infused in the same way, more distilled.
Yeah.
So a little different, not as much plant material.
Yeah, we did a basket like run with some of our ingredients from the first time, and we just found that it just really needed this intense steeping maceration to get the flavor that we wanted. So after that, we were just like, no, we're just going to do it this way. We're just going to accept it. And the biggest thing is like, we do not chill filter either. Cause we found that affected the body too much, pulled too much out. But one time, not that long ago even, we had like an order coming in. We had to make a batch of aperitivo, and it was this weird snap cold in Tennessee, and we don't work in any distilleries here that are temperature controlled, production space wise. I know, very traditional.
Yeah.
Would be great. I don't know who's doing that. Would be nice. So it was like 19 degrees inside the distillery, and we tried to just do the filter, and it was like environmentally it chill filtered, and what we got at the end was it was like a sad shade of what this thing should be. So much of the color was gone. So much of the character was gone, because we're not only looking for this body from the sugar that we add, but also this whiskey base that we use. Instead of having it be a neutral base, it's a whiskey base, and there is like an element of the body, the mouthfeel that you get from that, especially as you dilute it, that we were not going to have at all if we had proceeded with that specific batch. So that went into the ever-growing kind of vat of fuck up juice that we have. Yeah. We just have like versions of blends of the same product that were not quite right. And that's another thing. Once you add the sugar, you cannot add anything else. Mm-hmm. You know? Once that sugar's in there, you can't go back, So if it's wrong after that, it's wrong. There's really not like much you can do. You have to just kind of put it aside and start from square one. But we've done that, we've done it, and it's been wrong, or it's been not what we wanted. And yeah, I mean, it's a very different process making this versus just making a spirit, like a full strength spirit through distillation. You obviously do a ton to get that character in that spirit. And then with barrel aging, especially, and ultimately like blending and proofing, you have so much control. But at one point, there's like an end to what you can do with that. I mean, you can continue blending it, but there's like a perceivable end to that road. And with these types of liqueurs, you can keep adding and subtracting and adjusting and manipulating the ingredients for, infinite time until the end of days. And part of you is like, oh yeah, I do want to just keep going on this until it is perfect. But what is perfect in this context? It's never going to be perfect, really. You just have to kind of get it to a place where you want it to be, and then just commit to the consistency. But we have definitely fallen into the trap of over analyzing what we've made and then going back and trying to like tweak it a little bit. And sometimes you have to just like walk away from the notebook, walk away from the table, stick to what you're doing, and just continue with that. But it's It's tough. It's tough. It's a hard thing to like turn off in your brain.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And what a great note to close on with this podcast. For more than 30 years, G&D Chillers has had the proven solution for distilleries. Visit them today at gdchillers.com. If you've enjoyed this podcast, go to spiritsanddistilling.com and sign up for our free newsletter featuring news stories every week from some of the best writers and distillers in the distilling world. Devon, if people want to learn more or taste for themselves some of your work, where can they find you?
Yeah, so you can find me. Well, you can find my company online. It's just Liba, Liba Spirits, SPIRITS.com, or at Liba Spirits on like Instagram. I mean, we have a Facebook too, but I don't really use it. And then you can find me also on Instagram at devlovesbev, DEVLOVES.
Love it.
BV, love. Yeah, very simple. And I actually do write for some publications, including this very company, Craft Spirits and Distilling. Yay! So check out anything that I've written there. It's a great resource. The entire company is full of great like writers and minds and really smart people.
Didn't you just have a series about some of the very stuff we talked about today? So if someone wanted to learn more about sugar filtration.
Yes. Oh, I did, right? Oh my God, I think I did.
So fun.
And my brain is a sieve these days. Yes, please. Yeah. I have written about working with liqueurs, producing liqueurs. I will continue to write about it because I'm always trying to learn more. So please check out that exact kind of subject on the Craft Spirits and Distilling site.
Perfect. We'll be back in 2 weeks with another in-depth distilling conversation. Thanks for joining us. Cheers.
This podcast has been brought to you by Spirits and Distilling for those who love to make and drink great spirits. Join our free newsletter today at spiritsanddistilling.com for pragmatic, technical, and creative distilling stories in your inbox every week. Sign up now at spiritsanddistilling.com or click on the link in the show notes.